Hello, everybody. I'm going to be sharing a little bit about our readings from this week with Chapter 7 with the Conscious Aroused, Gender and Sexual Disinterest, and the Rise of the Oriental. And this was assigned to us to read and just share our thoughts on understanding. And so in this week, we start to see a shift in culture, in the American culture, and the taking of Chinese and Japanese immigrants into America. There's a couple of things where we see that there is a merging of or a blending that starts to happen with the Chinese and Japanese culture. Or how they were distinguished differently. Now you kind of see how they're starting to come together in the American eyes. So whereas Chinese were kind of separate in how they were received and viewed in the American eyes compared to Japanese, now we're starting to see that there are a blending in the sense of like in like things that are being sold. So like for instance, the Americans purchasing like furniture and dress and even culture, embracing the two cultures together in comparison to before where they were separate, and it seemed to be more welcome to the culture of Japanese. But in one particular part in our book where it shares a story that was shared about the Japanese woman being dressed in her regular outfit, but then all of a sudden you see that she has a Chinese headpiece. And so we see that there is now an embrace of both cultures kind of coming together. And then not only in the American eyes, but also the Chinese kind of embracing some of the Japanese culture because they see that they're more accepted and that the Americans kind of have a more of a taking to them than they do themselves for the Chinese. So like with the Chinese prostitutions, how they, Chinese women were okay with being sex slaves, with being prostitutes. And so they kind of viewed, well, hey, what if I purchase, like Japanese kimonos and then I wear something like that and I dress in that way, I could probably make a lot more money because they're more accepted by the white men, and there was an attraction there. And so we see how even the Chinese women are wanting to embrace a bit of the Japanese culture for their benefit. And then further along in our readings, we even see that they are no longer being distinguished by Chinese and Japanese. Now there's this merging in there called Orientals, to kind of distinguish them together as a whole, not as a separate. And that's in the readings with Suryoshi in page 143. And it actually states it as the Orientals as a catch-all term that's being used by America, by the whites. So I found that very interesting. And then just, also just seeing just even the Americans, the white families, spending, $40,000 to furnish their home with a blend of both Japanese and Chinese culture, just because there is now this, and in a sense, now the theme is attracting them, and sort of this embrace. So I think the big scope of this week's reading is just, kind of like how now America, white people, are viewing the Chinese and Japanese immigrants coming into America. They're no longer separated as Chinese and Japanese. We see this merging coming together, this blending of both them being distinguished kind of in the same group now, and they're called Orientals. And then we see just kind of how that is starting to play out in different stories that are shared in our readings. You know, even in pages 144 through 145, the story that's shared of this, of Wasing, who is this, he works in a white family's home, taking care of an infant or a baby who ends up getting sick, and he passes away, and then he, is grieving with the family, and then ends up passing away at the grieving, which shows a different side of his culture than what was accepted. And so this blending that starts to happen, and now the American eyes, like how they're now perceiving them, is different. So that's my takeaways on this week's reading. I can't wait to read a lot of yours on your takes. I'm pretty sure there's a lot more different areas that probably stood out to you, but I'm excited to read those and to have discussion about that. So have a nice week. Thank you.